Jurassic World, Theories of Sorna Part 3. By Aidan Richardson. The dense foliage of Isla Sorna whispered secrets in the gentle breeze as Emma, Jackson, and Shellshock made their way through the jungle. The path to the secret underground base was familiar yet fraught with the ever-present danger that lurked around every corner. Emma's eyes scanned the surroundings, her senses heightened by the urgency of their mission. Jackson, with his characteristic half-smile, kept a steady pace beside her, Shellshock's agile form a reassuring presence as it darted through the underbrush. The entrance to the underground base was concealed beneath a thick canopy of vines and foliage. As they approached, Emma tapped the sequence on a hidden panel, and the entrance slid open with a soft hiss. The trio descended into the dimly lit corridor, the air cool and filled with the hum of technology. Inside, the base was a hive of activity. Isabella Summers, her eyes focused and determined, was working diligently at a console, her fingers flying over the keys as she monitored the island's security systems. Dr. Rebecca Lynn stood nearby, her attention divided between a collection of samples and a map of the island. Connor, a newcomer to the team, was busy ensuring the baby Allosaurus was comfortable and safe, its curious eyes taking in the surroundings. Jasmine, Alex's wife, was engaged in a hushed conversation with Rachel, the tension in the room palpable. The absence of Alex, Michael, Lindsay, and Owen weighed heavily on everyone. The possibility of their capture at the government facility loomed like a dark cloud over the group. Emma cleared her throat, drawing the attention of the room. "We've made it back," she announced, her voice steady. "But there's no sign of Alex and the others. We need to figure out our next move." Isabella turned, her expression a mix of worry and resolve. "We have to assume they've been captured," she said. "But we can't lose hope. We need to come up with a plan to get them back." Jackson nodded, his gaze shifting to the map. "We know the facility's layout. If we can find a way in, we might be able to get them out before it's too late." Rebecca joined them, her eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. "We need to act fast," she said. "Every moment we wait is a moment they could be in danger." The room fell silent as each member of the team considered the stakes. The mission had become more than just a fight for the island's freedom, it was now a race against time to rescue their friends and family. Emma took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "Let's get to work," she said. "We have a lot to do and not much time to do it." The team sprang into action, their shared determination fueling their efforts. As the hum of activity resumed, the underground base became a beacon of hope amidst the uncertainty. Emma gathered the team around the central table, her mind racing as she laid out the plan. "We know the government facility's layout," she began, pointing to a detailed map spread across the table. "Our best bet is to infiltrate through the ventilation system here." She indicated a narrow passage on the map, which leads directly to the detention area where Alex, Michael, Lindsay, and Owen are likely being held. Jackson leaned in, his half-smile replaced by a serious expression. "It's risky," he acknowledged, "but it's our best shot. We need to move quickly before they strengthen their security." Connor, standing tall and resolute, stepped forward. "I'll go with you," he volunteered, his voice steady. "I've got experience in tight spaces, and we need all the hands we can get." Rebecca nodded, her eyes meeting Emma's. "Count me in too," she said. "We can't afford to leave anyone behind, and I can provide medical assistance if needed." Emma gave a nod of approval, appreciating their willingness to face danger head-on. "All right," she said, her voice firm. "Jackson, Connor, Rebecca, and I will head to the facility. Jasmine, Jacob, Rachel, and Isabella, you will stay here to protect the base and the baby Allosaurus. We can't risk leaving it unguarded." Isabella, though anxious about her father's safety, understood the importance of their roles. "We'll hold down the fort," she assured, her gaze steady. "Just make sure you all come back safely." Jasmine wrapped an arm around Isabella's shoulders, offering comfort. "We'll keep everything secure here," she promised, her voice filled with determination. With the plan set, Emma and her team gathered their gear, preparing for the mission ahead. The weight of their task hung heavy, but the resolve to rescue their friends fueled their every move. As they made their way to the exit, Shellshock, the ever-loyal velociraptor, fell into step beside Jackson, ready to lend its unique skills to the mission. The jungle awaited them, its shadows concealing both danger and opportunity. The team moved swiftly through the underbrush, their senses attuned to the island's sounds. Each step brought them closer to the facility, and to the hope of reuniting with their captured comrades. The jungle seemed to close around them as Emma, Jackson, Connor, and Rebecca pressed on, each step bringing them closer to the government facility. The air was thick with tension, yet the camaraderie among them provided a comforting sense of unity. Shellshock, ever vigilant, moved with an uncanny grace that belied the danger lurking in the shadows. As they neared the facility, the team paused at the edge of a dense thicket. Emma raised a hand, signaling for silence. Hold on, she whispered, her eyes scanning the perimeter. There's something here. Jackson crouched beside her, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the area. Do you see that? He asked, pointing to a patch of undergrowth that seemed slightly disturbed. Connor stepped forward, brushing aside the foliage to reveal a narrow passageway, partially obscured by vines and debris. Looks like we found ourselves a hidden entrance, he said, a hint of excitement in his voice. Rebecca joined them, her analytical mind already assessing the potential of their discovery. This could lead directly into the facility, she speculated. It might be part of an older structure they built over. Emma nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. It's worth the risk, she decided. This could give us the element of surprise we need. The team quickly formulated a plan. Emma would lead the way, with Jackson and Shellshock providing cover. Connor and Rebecca would follow, ready to respond to any unforeseen challenges. As they entered the passage, the air grew cooler, the walls closing in around them. The narrow corridor wound its way beneath the facility, the dim light casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. The hidden entrance proved to be a stroke of luck, leading them directly to a service hatch that opened into the facility's lower levels. The team emerged into a dimly lit corridor, the hum of machinery echoing through the space. Emma signaled for the team to spread out, each member taking up a position that allowed them to cover as much ground as possible. The facility was a labyrinth of corridors and rooms, each holding the potential for both discovery and danger. With a shared nod of determination, they moved forward, their mission clear: find Alex, Michael, Lindsay, and Owen, and get them out before it was too late. As the team navigated through the dimly lit corridors of the facility, a low hum of machinery filled the air, interspersed with distant roars and unsettling sounds that sent chills down their spines. Emma led the way, her heart racing with anticipation and dread as they approached a door marked restricted access. With a swift motion, she pushed the door open, and the sight that greeted them was nothing short of horrifying. The room was a hidden laboratory, filled with high-tech equipment and glass enclosures that housed various hybrid dinosaurs, creatures that were a grotesque blend of species, their features twisted and unnatural. By the stars, Jackson breathed, his voice barely above a whisper. He stepped closer to one of the enclosures, his eyes widening in shock. Inside, a hybrid resembling a velociraptor stood, its scales shimmering with an unnatural hue, while its eyes glowed with an eerie intelligence. What have they done? Rebecca's expression shifted from shock to anger as she observed another enclosure where a triceratops was restrained, its horns dulled by the harsh lighting and the drugs coursing through its system. This is barbaric, she muttered, her fists clenching. They're experimenting on these creatures, turning them into something they were never meant to be. Connor moved to a nearby workstation, scanning the monitors filled with data and images of the hybrids. They're documenting everything, he said, his voice tinged with disbelief. This isn't just research, it's torture. Emma stepped forward, her resolve hardening. We need to gather evidence of this, she said. If we can expose what they're doing here, it could turn public opinion against them and save these dinosaurs from further suffering. As the team worked quickly to document the horrifying experiments, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, drawing closer. Emma's heart raced. We need to move, she urged, glancing toward the door. If they find us here, we won't make it out. But before they could leave, a low growl resonated from one of the enclosures, and the hybrid velociraptor began to claw at the glass, its eyes locked onto Jackson. We need to go, now, he shouted, backing away instinctively. Just then, a loud crash echoed from the opposite end of the lab, followed by the frantic sounds of alarms blaring. The facility was on high alert. The alarm blared relentlessly, its shrill sound echoing through the lab as the team scrambled to gather their bearings. Just as Emma reached for the evidence they had collected, the door burst open with a bang, and a squad of armed security personnel stormed in, their faces set with grim determination. Freeze! One of the guards shouted, raising his weapon. The tension in the room skyrocketed, and Emma felt her heart pound in her chest. There was no way they could fight their way out without a plan. In that split second, Jackson's instincts kicked in. We need a distraction, he shouted, his eyes darting toward the hybrid velociraptor's cage. Without a moment's hesitation, he rushed to the enclosure, frantically working to unlock the door. Jackson, what are you doing? Emma exclaimed, but it was too late. With a swift motion, Jackson yanked the door open, and the hybrid velociraptor lunged out, its powerful limbs propelling it forward with terrifying speed. The guards barely had time to react before the hybrid was upon them, its claws slashing through the air as it let out a piercing roar. The security team scrambled to regain control, but the velociraptor was fueled by instinct and rage, attacking with a ferocity that sent them reeling. Go, go, Emma urged, her voice cutting through the chaos. The team took advantage of the distraction, darting past the guards and the rampaging hybrid. Rebecca and Connor followed closely behind, adrenaline surging through their veins. As they raced through the lab, Jackson glanced back, watching the hybrid tear into the ranks of the security team. "That should buy us some time," he shouted, his voice filled with a mix of exhilaration and fear. They navigated the maze of the facility, the alarms still blaring and the sounds of chaos echoing behind them. Emma led the way, her mind racing as they sought a path to safety. The stakes had risen dramatically. Not only were they fighting to rescue their friends, but they were now embroiled in a full-blown escape. Suddenly, they reached a crossroads in the corridor. To the left, a door labeled emergency exits promised an escape route, while to the right, the sounds of footsteps indicated that more guards were closing in. As the team stood at the crossroads, the blaring alarms and chaos faded momentarily when a faint, familiar voice echoed from a nearby room. "Help! Is anyone there?" The voice was strained, filled with urgency. Emma's heart skipped a beat. It sounded like Michael. "Did you hear that?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with concern. "It's Michael." Without hesitation, Rebecca rushed toward the door from which the voice emanated. "We have to check it out," she insisted, her hand already on the doorknob. As she swung the door open, a wave of darkness enveloped them. The room was pitch black, the only sounds being the faint hum of machinery and the distant roar of the hybrid velociraptors still wreaking havoc in the lab. "Jackson, turn on the flashlight," Emma urged, her voice low as they stepped into the inky void. Jackson flicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness and revealing a chilling sight. In the corner of the room stood a hybrid dinosaur, its form a grotesque blend of various species. Its eyes glowed eerily in the light, and as it turned towards them, the creature opened its mouth, mimicking Michael's voice with uncanny precision. "Help me, please," it pleaded, the sound sending shivers down their spines. "That's not Michael," Connor exclaimed, his voice tinged with horror. "It's a trap." The hybrid's body twitched, its muscles coiling as it seemed to study the team, its expression a mix of curiosity and predatory instinct. The mimicry was an unsettling reminder of the depths of the government's depravity. "Stay back," Emma warned, raising her hands defensively. "We don't know what it's capable of." Jackson took a step forward, his flashlight illuminating more of the creature. "It's learned to mimic voices," he said, his voice steady but laced with concern. "We need to be careful." The hybrid took a step closer, its movements fluid and almost graceful, yet there was an underlying tension in the air. It was both fascinating and terrifying, a living testament to the horrors of their situation. Panic surged through the team as the hybrid dinosaur lunged forward, its mouth opening wide to reveal rows of jagged teeth. Emma's instincts kicked in, and she quickly scanned the room for an escape route. The darkness felt suffocating, and the threat of the creature was palpable. "Back! Everyone back!" Emma shouted, urging the team to retreat as she searched for a door or window that might lead them to safety. The hybrid's growl echoed in the confined space, a chilling reminder of the danger they faced. Just as the creature was about to close the distance, a flash of movement caught Emma's eye. Shellshock, Jackson's loyal velociraptor, burst into the room, having followed the team out of instinct. With a fierce determination, Shellshock leapt forward, sinking its teeth into the hybrid's neck. The hybrid let out a deafening screech, its momentum halted as it twisted in surprise. The two dinosaurs engaged in a chaotic struggle, the room filled with the sounds of growls and the thud of bodies colliding. "Now's our chance," Jackson yelled, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Get to the exit." Emma led the way, her heart racing as she dashed toward a door on the far side of the room. Connor and Rebecca followed closely, their eyes darting back to the fight unfolding behind them. Shellshock was holding its ground, but the hybrid was powerful, and Emma knew they couldn't rely on it for long. As they reached the door, Emma flung it open, revealing a narrow corridor that led away from the chaos. "This way," she urged, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The team hurried down the corridor, the sounds of the struggle fading behind them. They could still hear the occasional roar and the clash of claws, but Shellshock's intervention had bought them precious time. "Where do we go from here?" Connor asked, glancing back nervously. "We need to regroup with the others." Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing as she considered their options. "We need to find a way to the detention area," she said. "If Michael and the others are still alive, that's where they'll be." With renewed determination, they pressed on, each step bringing them closer to their friends and further from the horrors they had just witnessed. As Emma, Jackson, Connor, and Rebecca navigated the dimly lit corridor, the tension in the air was palpable. The sounds of their hurried footsteps echoed off the walls, mingling with the distant, muffled voices that grew louder with each passing moment. Emma's heart raced as she strained to listen, her instincts telling her they were close to the detention area. "Do you hear that?" Emma whispered, pausing to focus on the voices. They were indistinct, but the tone was unmistakable, urgent and filled with anxiety. Jackson nodded, his expression serious. "It sounds like they're in trouble. We have to hurry." They quickened their pace, moving cautiously toward the source of the voices. The corridor opened up into a larger room, and through a small window in the door, they could see several guards standing around a group of restrained individuals. Emma's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the familiar faces of Michael, Lindsay, and Owen. "They're in there," Emma exclaimed, her voice a mix of relief and urgency. "We have to get them out." Rebecca glanced around the room, her mind racing with possibilities. "If we can create a distraction, we might be able to slip in and free them," she suggested, her eyes scanning for anything they could use. Connor nodded in agreement. "Maybe we can use the alarms to our advantage. If we set them off in another part of the facility, it could draw the guards away." Emma considered their options, her focus shifting between the guards and her friends. "We need to act fast. If they notice us, we'll lose our chance." Just then, the voices from the detention area grew louder, and Emma could make out snippets of conversation. "We can't let them escape. We need to secure the area," one guard barked, his tone filled with authority. "How long until backup arrives?" another asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. "Not long. They'll be here any minute," the first guard replied. With time running out, Emma knew they had to make a decision quickly. Emma, Jackson, Connor, and Rebecca exchanged glances, the urgency of the situation weighing heavily on them. Instead of rushing in, Emma decided that patience might be their best ally. "Let's wait a moment and listen," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "We need to know exactly what we're dealing with before we make a move." They pressed against the wall, straining to hear the conversation unfolding in the detention area. The guards continued their exchange, their voices a mix of authority and anxiety. "Did you hear about the escape attempt on the other side of the facility?" one guard said, his tone laced with concern. "If they manage to breach our defenses, we could all be in serious trouble." "Yeah, I heard. They've been getting bolder," another replied, glancing nervously at the door. "We need to tighten security, especially with the hybrids causing chaos. If any of them get loose." Emma's heart raced at the mention of hybrids. The chaos they had witnessed earlier could be the distraction they needed, but it also meant that their friends were in even greater danger. "How long do you think we can hold them?" the first guard asked, his voice tinged with doubt. "Backup should be here soon, but we can't risk letting them escape. We can hold them until the reinforcements arrive," the second guard replied confidently. "But we need to keep an eye on that one." He pointed toward Owen, who was looking particularly defiant, his jaw set in determination. Emma felt a surge of hope. If they could create enough of a distraction, they might be able to free their friends before backup arrived. But they needed to be smart about it. "We should wait until they're distracted," Jackson suggested, his eyes focused on the guards. "If we can catch them off guard, we might have a chance." As they continued to listen, the guards shifted their attention to the monitors on the wall, discussing the status of the facility. Emma's mind raced with possibilities, weighing the risks and rewards of each potential action. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the guards began to move away from the door, their attention diverted to a nearby screen displaying the chaos from the lab. Emma seized the moment, her instincts kicking in. Emma took a deep breath, her mind racing as she signaled to the team. It was time to make their move. The guards' attention was momentarily diverted, and they had to act quickly before the opportunity slipped away. "Let's do this," Emma whispered, her voice filled with determination. Connor nodded, gripping a large wrench he had found in a nearby maintenance room. The metal felt cool and solid in his hand, a reassuring weight as he prepared for what came next. Jackson positioned himself near the door, ready to support Connor. Rebecca stood by, her eyes focused and alert, ready to assist at a moment's notice. As they waited with bated breath, one of the guards stepped out of the detention area, his attention still on the monitors. Connor moved with precision, swinging the wrench with just enough force to knock the guard unconscious. The guard crumpled to the ground silently, and the team quickly moved into action. Emma and Jackson rushed into the detention area, their eyes scanning the room. Relief washed over them as they spotted Alex, Michael, Owen, and Lindsay inside a cell, their expressions a mix of surprise and hope. "Emma," Alex exclaimed, his voice filled with both relief and urgency. "We knew you'd come." Owen gave a nod of acknowledgement, his eyes sharp and focused. "We need to get out of here, fast," he said, his voice steady. "They won't stay distracted for long." Lindsay, her face streaked with concern but also with a glimmer of determination, added, "We heard about the hybrids. We have to stop them." Michael, though visibly weary, managed a small smile. "It's good to see you guys," he said, his voice tinged with gratitude. Rebecca quickly assessed the lock on the cell, her fingers deftly working to release it. "We need to hurry," she urged, her voice calm but insistent. "Backup could be here any minute." With a click, the lock gave way, and the cell door swung open. The team quickly helped their friends to their feet, the urgency of their situation fueling their movements. As they prepared to leave, the distant sound of alarms and chaos continued to echo through the facility, a reminder of the dangers that still lay ahead. The tension in the room was palpable as Owen quickly assessed their options. "We can use the ventilation system," he suggested, his mind working rapidly. "It should lead us out of the facility without running into more guards." Emma nodded in agreement, her gaze sweeping over the team. "Let's move," she urged, helping Alex and Lindsay towards the vent. Jackson and Rebecca followed, with Connor and Shellshock bringing up the rear. The team moved swiftly, their movements synchronized as they climbed into the ventilation ducts. The metal passageway was cramped, but it offered the promise of a stealthy escape. Shellshock navigated the tight space with surprising agility, its presence a comforting reassurance. As they crawled through the vents, the sounds of chaos and alarms grew fainter, replaced by the rhythmic thud of their movements. The plan was working, but they knew they couldn't let their guard down. However, as Michael and Owen prepared to follow, a chilling sound reached their ears, the distinct growls of the two hybrids from earlier. The hybrid velociraptor and the mimic were close, their presence a looming threat. Owen exchanged a glance with Michael, a silent understanding passing between them. "We need to buy them time," Owen said, his voice calm yet firm. "I'll distract the hybrid mimic." Michael nodded, determination etched across his features. "I'll handle the velociraptor," he replied, his voice steady despite the danger. The two men moved quickly, closing the vent behind their friends to ensure their safety. Michael positioned himself near the entrance to the room, drawing the velociraptor's attention with a series of sharp whistles. The creature's head snapped towards him, its eyes gleaming with predatory focus. Meanwhile, Owen circled around, using the shadows to his advantage. The mimic hybrid, intrigued by the sound of footsteps, turned its attention to Owen, its eyes narrowing with curiosity. As Michael and Owen engaged the hybrids, the rest of the team continued their journey through the vents, unaware of the sacrifice being made on their behalf. Each movement brought them closer to freedom, but also further from their friends. After what felt like an eternity of crawling through the cramped ventilation system, the team finally spotted a faint light ahead. Emma pushed through the last section of the vent and emerged into the cool night air, followed closely by Jackson, Rebecca, Connor, Lindsay, and Shellshock. They had made it outside the facility, the sounds of chaos fading behind them. "Thank God we're out," Lindsay breathed, her voice a mix of relief and exhaustion as she took in the open space around them. Jackson scanned the area, his brow furrowing as he realized something. "Wait a minute," he said, his voice tense. "Where are Owen and Michael? They should have come through by now." Before anyone could respond, Connor reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "I found this," he said, unfolding it carefully. The note was written in Michael's familiar scrawl, and as Connor read it aloud, a lump formed in his throat. "Hey, publish my book for me." The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken meaning. The team exchanged worried glances, the gravity of the situation settling in once more. "What does he mean by that?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Is he?" Emma shook her head, trying to suppress the rising panic. "No, we can't think like that. We have to believe they're okay. They're just delayed." Jackson's expression hardened with determination. "We can't leave them behind. We need to figure out a way to get back in there and find them." Connor folded the note carefully, his heart heavy with concern for his friends. "If they're still inside, we need a plan. We can't just rush in blindly." As they stood there, the reality of their predicament loomed large. The facility was still a dangerous place, and time was running out. Inside the facility, the atmosphere was thick with tension as Owen and Michael navigated the dimly lit corridors, the sounds of the hybrids echoing behind them. The velociraptor's growls resonated through the air, a chilling reminder of the danger they faced. The mimic hybrid, with its ability to imitate voices, added an unsettling layer to their pursuit. "Keep moving," Owen urged, glancing back to see the hybrids gaining ground. Their instincts were sharp, and they were relentless in their chase. "We need to lead them away from the others." Michael nodded, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "I'll try to lure the velociraptor this way." He darted to the left, using a series of sharp whistles and loud shouts to grab the attention of the agile predator. The velociraptor's eyes locked onto him, its focus unwavering. Owen, meanwhile, turned to face the hybrid mimic, which was trailing behind with an eerie grace. It seemed to sense his fear, its head tilting as it echoed Michael's earlier calls for help, mimicking his voice with chilling accuracy. "Help me, help us," it cried out, its tone almost pleading. "Don't listen to it," Owen shouted, forcing himself to stand firm. He knew the creature was trying to manipulate him, but he couldn't let it distract him from their mission. With a swift motion, he grabbed a nearby tool from a maintenance cart and prepared to defend himself if necessary. As they ran deeper into the facility, the two men exchanged determined glances. They understood the stakes. They were buying time for their friends to escape, even if it meant putting their own lives on the line. The hybrids were relentless, their growls echoing off the walls as they pursued Owen and Michael. The two men maneuvered through the labyrinthine corridors, but the hybrids were closing in. Owen could feel the weight of their situation pressing down on him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. Suddenly, they reached a large room filled with equipment and crates. Owen turned to Michael, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We can use this to our advantage. Let's create a barrier." Michael nodded, quickly grabbing a nearby crate and pushing it toward the entrance. Just as they finished barricading the door, the velociraptor slammed against it, its powerful body rattling the structure. The mimic hybrid let out a series of distorted sounds, echoing their earlier words, creating a haunting chorus of confusion. "Now what?" Michael asked, panting heavily. "We can't hold them off forever." Owen took a deep breath, his mind racing. "We need to find a way to distract them long enough for our friends to get out. If we can create a diversion, we might have a chance." As the sounds of the hybrids grew louder, Owen and Michael prepared themselves for the fight of their lives, knowing that every moment counted. Owen and Michael exchanged determined glances, their hearts pounding as they steeled themselves for the inevitable confrontation. The hybrids were relentless, and there was no turning back now. They would fight for their lives, for their friends, and for the freedom of the dinosaurs. "Ready?" Owen asked, gripping the tool tightly in his hand. Michael nodded, his jaw set with resolve. They were prepared to face whatever came through that door. As the velociraptor hybrid slammed against the barricade, its claws scraping against the surface, the tension in the room reached a boiling point. Just as they braced themselves for the onslaught, something unexpected happened. A sudden commotion erupted behind the velociraptor hybrid. Before Owen and Michael could react, a massive, shadowy figure lunged from the darkness, grabbing the velociraptor's leg with an iron grip. The hybrid let out a startled screech, its eyes wide with panic as it was slowly dragged backward, away from the door. "What the hell is that?" Michael exclaimed, his eyes widening in disbelief. Owen squinted into the shadows, trying to make sense of the situation. The creature dragging the velociraptor was massive, its form obscured by the dim lighting of the room. The velociraptor struggled fiercely, but it was no match for the strength of its captor. As the hybrid was pulled further into the darkness, Owen and Michael exchanged looks of confusion and relief. The distraction had come from an unexpected alley, but they were still on high alert. Whatever was happening could be just as dangerous. "Should we help it?" Michael asked, glancing back at Owen. He wasn't sure whether to feel sympathy for the creature or to take advantage of the chaos. "No," Owen replied firmly. "We need to focus on getting out of here. If that thing can distract the velociraptor, we might have a chance to escape." With the velociraptor hybrid momentarily occupied, Owen and Michael seized the opportunity to slip out of the room, moving quietly toward the exit. They could hear the sounds of the struggle behind them, but they knew they had to keep moving. As they reached the corridor, the echoes of the fight faded, and the two men pressed on, hoping to find their way back to their friends before it was too late. Just as Owen and Michael made their way down the corridor, a chilling sound echoed behind them. The mimic hybrid, having regained its composure, lunged forward, its eyes locked onto them with predatory intent. It had been waiting, lurking in the shadows, and now it was ready to strike. "Owen, watch out!" Michael shouted, turning just in time to see the hybrid springing toward them, its mouth wide open, ready to unleash its deadly bite. Owen reacted instinctively, raising the tool he had been holding as a makeshift weapon. He swung it at the creature, aiming for its head. The hybrid dodged, its movements fluid and agile, as it twisted in midair, narrowly avoiding the blow. "Back! We need to create some distance," Owen yelled, retreating down the corridor, his heart racing. The mimic hybrid was relentless, its ability to mimic their voices adding an unsettling layer to the encounter. It let out a guttural growl, followed by a distorted echo of Michael's earlier shouts for help. "Help! Help us!" it cried, its voice a twisted mockery of Michael's own. "Don't listen to it," Owen urged, his focus narrowing as they moved further away from the hybrid. "We can't let it get inside our heads." Michael nodded, his own fear giving way to determination. "We need to find a way to stop it before it can alert the others." As the hybrid closed in, Owen and Michael braced themselves for a fight. They were outnumbered and outmatched, but they wouldn't go down without a struggle. The corridor was narrow, limiting their movements, but they had to make their stand. With a fierce growl, the mimic hybrid lunged again, its claws slashing through the air. Owen ducked just in time, feeling the rush of air as the creature missed him by inches. He swung his tool again, this time aiming for the hybrid's flank. The clash of metal against scales echoed through the corridor, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still as the two men fought for their lives against the terrifying creature. As Owen and Michael battled the mimic hybrid, the tension in the air was electric, each movement a desperate attempt to stay one step ahead of the creature's lethal strikes. The mimic's distorted cries echoed through the corridor, heightening the sense of urgency. But then, amidst the chaos, Michael's ears caught a familiar sound, a series of sharp, distinct calls that resonated through the facility. It was the unmistakable vocalizations of velociraptors, their cries filled with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. "Wait, do you hear that?" Michael shouted, his eyes widening with realization. Owen paused for a brief moment, his own senses attuned to the sounds. "Raptors," he confirmed, his voice filled with a mix of hope and disbelief. Suddenly, from the shadows, 5 velociraptors emerged, their sleek forms moving with a deadly grace. Michael recognized them immediately, Shellshock's mother and his 4 siblings. They had found their way into the facility, drawn by the commotion and the familiar scent of their kin. The mimic hybrid turned its attention to the new arrivals, its eyes narrowing as it assessed the threat. But the raptors wasted no time, launching themselves at the mimic with a coordinated ferocity that spoke of their instinctual bond. In a flurry of claws and teeth, the raptors descended upon the mimic hybrid, their movements a blur of precision and power. The mimic screeched in surprise, its attempts to mimic their calls falling flat in the face of their relentless assault. Owen and Michael watched in awe as the raptors worked together, their natural instincts guiding them as they overwhelmed the mimic hybrid. It was a spectacle of nature's raw power, a reminder of the delicate balance that existed between predator and prey. "Looks like we have some unexpected allies," Owen said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Michael nodded, his heart swelling with gratitude. "We owe them," he replied, his voice filled with emotion. With the mimic hybrid momentarily subdued, Owen and Michael took the opportunity to regroup, their breaths coming in heavy gasps as they prepared to continue their journey. With the mimic hybrid occupied by the ferocity of Shellshock's mother and siblings, Owen and Michael seized the moment. The raptors provided the perfect distraction, their coordinated assault creating just enough chaos for the 2 men to slip away unnoticed. "Now's our chance," Owen urged, his voice filled with urgency. He led the way, retracing their steps through the winding corridors of the facility. The sounds of the raptors' battle with the hybrid faded behind them, replaced by the echoing silence of the abandoned halls. Michael followed closely, his heart pounding with adrenaline and relief. The facility felt like a labyrinth, but Owen's keen sense of direction guided them toward the exit. Each step brought them closer to freedom and the hope of reuniting with their friends. As they neared the exit, the cool night air wafted through the vents, a welcome contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. Owen and Michael quickened their pace, their senses on high alert for any signs of danger. Finally, they reached the exit, the door leading to the outside world standing ajar. The sight of the open sky filled them with a renewed sense of hope and determination. Stepping out into the night, they were greeted by the familiar faces of their friends. Emma, Jackson, Connor, Rebecca, Lindsay, and Shellshock stood waiting, their expressions a mix of relief and anticipation. "Owen, Michael," Emma exclaimed, rushing forward to embrace them. "We were so worried." Jackson grinned, his half-smile returning. "Took you long enough," he teased, clapping Michael on the back. "We had a little help," Michael replied, nodding toward the facility. Shellshock's family showed up just in time. Rebecca's eyes widened with surprise. "The raptors? They helped you?" Owen nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Nature has a way of surprising us. We owe them a lot." As the team regrouped, the weight of their mission settled over them once more. They had escaped the facility, but the challenges ahead were far from over. As the team regrouped under the open sky, the adrenaline of their escape began to fade, replaced by the stark reality of their situation. The facility still loomed in the distance, a reminder of the dangers they had narrowly avoided. Owen looked around at his friends, their faces weary yet determined. "We need to regroup and come up with a solid plan," he suggested, his voice steady. "The underground base is our best option. It's safe, and we can strategize without the threat of being discovered." Emma nodded, her expression resolute. "I agree. We need to assess our resources and figure out our next steps." Jackson glanced at the horizon, the sun beginning to rise, casting a warm glow over the jungle. "Let's move quickly. We can't afford to linger here." With a shared sense of purpose, the team made their way back to the underground base, the familiar path through the jungle offering both comfort and caution. As they walked, the sounds of Isla Sorna surrounded them, birds chirping, the rustle of leaves, and the distant calls of dinosaurs echoing through the dense foliage. Upon reaching the base, they descended into the cool, dimly lit interior. The atmosphere inside was a stark contrast to the chaos outside, and the team quickly settled into a rhythm, gathering around the central table. Isabella was already at the console, her fingers flying over the keys as she pulled up maps and data from the facility. "I've been monitoring the security feeds," she said, glancing up as the team entered. There's been a lot of movement near the facility since you guys left. What kind of movement? Michael asked, his brow furrowing. Reinforcements, Isabella replied, her tone serious. They're ramping up security, and if we don't act soon, we might lose our chance to strike back. Owen exchanged glances with the team, the weight of their situation settling heavily upon them. They had escaped, but the fight was far from over. As the team gathered around the console, poring over the maps and data, Jasmine stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on Isabella's shoulder. The weight of the situation hung heavily in the air, but her voice was calm and steady. Isabella, we need to think about getting the evidence against the government uploaded. We have to go home. Isabella looked up, her eyes reflecting both determination and concern. But we can't just leave now. There's still so much to do here. Alex, standing beside Jasmine, nodded in agreement with his wife. Jasmine's right. We have important information that needs to be shared with the world. If we don't act quickly, all of this could be for nothing. The team fell silent, considering the implications of their next move. The evidence they had gathered could expose the government's sinister plans and protect the dinosaurs they had fought so hard to save. But leaving meant putting their mission on hold, and the threat of the facility still loomed large. We can regroup later, Jasmine continued, her voice firm. But if we don't get this information out, we risk losing everything we've worked for. Isabella took a deep breath, realizing the truth in Jasmine's words. Okay, we'll go home and upload the evidence. But we need to ensure that we can return to Isla Sorna to continue our fight. With a shared sense of purpose, the team began to prepare for their journey back. They gathered the essential data and evidence, securing it carefully to ensure it would be ready for upload once they reached safety. As they packed their gear, the atmosphere shifted, a mix of urgency and determination fueling their actions. They had come too far to turn back now, and the fight for Isla Sorna was far from over. As the team prepared to board the small plane that would take them back home, they took a moment to say their goodbyes to the island's inhabitants. The mother Allosaurus stood protectively beside her baby, the Spinosaurus loomed with its powerful presence, and the T-Rex watched from a distance, a silent guardian of the land. Jackson felt a knot in his stomach, knowing that this farewell was bittersweet. Just as they were about to board, a familiar sound pierced the air, a series of sharp velociraptor calls. Jackson turned, and his heart swelled as he saw Shellshock's mother and his 4 siblings approaching, their movements graceful and purposeful. Hey, buddy, Jackson said softly, kneeling down to meet Shellshock's gaze. The velociraptor looked up at him, its intelligent eyes reflecting a mix of loyalty and understanding. Jackson reached out, gently petting Shellshock on the head. It's been fun, but I think it's time you got to know your real family. Shellshock tilted his head, as if processing Jackson's words. Don't worry, I'll always be around to protect you, even if I'm not on the island. So go to them. They need you. With a final, lingering look, Shellshock stepped away from Jackson and walked over to his family. The moment was heavy with emotion as Jackson watched the raptors reunite, the bond of family uniting them once more. Tears welled in his eyes, a mix of pride and sadness washing over him. Taking a deep breath, Jackson turned and made his way to the plane. The rest of the team followed suit, each member feeling the weight of the island's beauty and danger in their hearts. As they boarded the aircraft, the engines roared to life, and the plane began to taxi down the makeshift runway. As they took off, the team gathered by the windows, looking out at the lush greenery of Isla Sorna. The island, with its prehistoric inhabitants and untamed beauty, was a place they would always carry in their hearts. Goodbye, Shellshock, Jackson whispered, wiping away a tear as the island began to fade from view. The memories they had created together would forever remain etched in his mind. As the plane soared through the sky, leaving the lush landscape of Isla Sorna behind, the atmosphere inside was a mix of relief and anticipation. The team gathered together, their faces illuminated by the soft light filtering through the cabin windows. We need to focus on how we're going to share the evidence we gathered, Emma said, breaking the silence. Her tone was serious, reflecting the weight of their mission. This is our chance to expose the government's plans and protect the dinosaurs. Isabella nodded, her fingers tapping against the console in front of her. I've got everything organized on my laptop. We need to ensure that the data is presented clearly and concisely. If we can get the right people to see it, we could make a real impact. Alex leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. We should consider reaching out to trusted journalists and conservation organizations. They have the platforms to amplify our message and reach a wider audience. Jasmine chimed in, her voice filled with conviction. We can't just rely on one source. We need to create a comprehensive strategy to get the information out there. The more people who know, the better. Michael crossed his arms, a determined look on his face. What about a press conference? We could invite media outlets to hear our story directly from us. It would add credibility to the evidence. Rebecca nodded in agreement. That could work, but we need to prepare for the backlash. The government won't take this lying down. We need to be ready for any attempts to discredit us. Owen leaned back in his seat, considering their options. We should also think about a follow-up plan. Once the information is out, we need to keep the momentum going. We can't let this be a one-time thing. Jackson, still emotionally charged from his farewell to Shellshock, spoke up. Whatever we do, we have to make sure the dinosaurs are at the forefront of our message. They deserve a voice, and we can be that voice. As the team continued to discuss their plans, a sense of unity filled the cabin. They were not just a group of individuals, they were a team with a shared purpose, ready to take on the challenges ahead. As the conversation flowed, Emma leaned forward, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. What if we create a documentary? She suggested, her voice filled with enthusiasm. We could showcase our experiences on Isla Sorna, the evidence we've gathered, and the stories of the dinosaurs. It would be a powerful way to connect with people emotionally and raise awareness. The team paused, considering the idea. The thought of capturing their journey on film resonated with many of them, and the potential impact was undeniable. That's actually a brilliant idea, Isabella said, her fingers already flying over her laptop keyboard. We could compile footage from our time on the island, interviews with each of us, and present the evidence in a compelling way. Jackson nodded, a smile creeping onto his face. A documentary would give us a chance to tell our story in our own words. It could reach a much wider audience than just a press release. Alex crossed his arms, contemplating the logistics. We'd need to gather all the footage we have and organize it. We can also include the footage of the hybrids and the experiments to emphasize the urgency of the situation. Rebecca chimed in, we should also reach out to filmmakers or documentarians who specialize in wildlife and conservation. They might have the expertise to help us present our story effectively. Owen leaned back, clearly impressed with the idea. If we can capture the beauty of the island and the plight of the dinosaurs, it could really resonate with viewers. People connect with stories, and this could be a way to rally support. The excitement in the cabin grew as the team began brainstorming how to make the documentary a reality. They discussed potential titles, themes, and the key messages they wanted to convey. Each member contributed their thoughts, and the collaborative energy was palpable. As the plane continued its journey home, the team felt a renewed sense of purpose. They were not just fighting for their friends on Isla Sorna, they were fighting for the future of the dinosaurs and the preservation of the natural world. As the team continued to discuss their plans for the documentary, Jackson found himself staring out of the window, lost in thought. The landscape below transformed from the lush greenery of Isla Sorna to the sprawling urban environment they were approaching, but his mind was still on the island and the family he had just said goodbye to. He felt a profound sense of disconnection from Shellshock, the velociraptor he had raised from an egg. Memories flooded his mind, the first time Shellshock had opened its eyes, the moments they had shared exploring the island, and the bond they had formed over countless adventures. The realization that he had to let Shellshock go to reconnect with its true family weighed heavily on his heart. Hey, you all right? Emma's voice broke through his reverie, pulling him back to the present. She noticed the distant look in his eyes and the sadness etched on his face. Jackson sighed, his gaze still fixed on the passing clouds. I can't shake the feeling of leaving Shellshock behind. We've been through so much together. It feels wrong to just let him go. Emma nodded, understanding the depth of his emotions. It's hard, I know, but you did what was best for him. He needs to be with his family, and you gave him that chance. I just hope he understands, Jackson replied, his voice thick with emotion. He's been my partner, my friend. I just want him to be safe. You've given him a strong foundation, Emma reassured him. He'll always remember you. The bond you two share is special, and it won't fade just because you're apart. Jackson took a deep breath, allowing her words to sink in. He knew she was right, but the ache in his chest remained. As the plane continued its flight, he resolved to focus on the mission ahead, knowing that their fight for Isla Sorna and its inhabitants was far from over. The plane touched down at Los Angeles Airport, the familiar sounds of the bustling terminal greeting the team as they disembarked. The weight of their mission hung in the air, but for Jackson, a different urgency pulsed within him. As the group gathered their belongings, he felt a deep longing for Isla Sorna and the family he had left behind. Hey, are you coming with us? Emma asked, noticing Jackson lingering by the exit. Jackson shook his head, determination etched on his face. I can't stay here. I need to go back to Isla Sorna. I have a contact who can arrange a private plane for me. I want to be with Shellshock and his family. The team exchanged surprised glances, but Jackson's resolve was unwavering. I've raised him since he was an egg. He needs me, and I need him. I can't just walk away. Alex stepped forward, placing a hand on Jackson's shoulder. I understand, Jackson. You've built a bond that's hard to break. Just promise us you will be safe and keep in touch. I will, Jackson replied, his voice steady. I'll make sure to keep you all updated on what's happening on the island. As the team gathered their things, Jackson pulled out his phone and quickly dialed his contact. He could feel the excitement bubbling within him, knowing that soon he would be back where he truly belonged. Yeah, it's me. Can you arrange a private flight to Isla Sorna? Jackson spoke into the phone, his heart racing as he listened to the response. Great. I'll meet you at the hangar. With a final wave to his friends, Jackson turned and headed toward the exit, determination fueling his steps. He knew the road ahead would be challenging, but he was ready to face whatever came his way. As he walked away, he felt a sense of purpose wash over him. He was going back to protect the dinosaurs and reunite with Shellshock, and nothing would stand in his way. Jackson arrived at the private hangar, the familiar scent of aviation fuel and the sound of engines humming filling the air. His heart raced with anticipation as he approached the sleek aircraft waiting for him. This was it, his chance to return home to Isla Sorna. As he stepped closer, he was greeted by a figure he hadn't expected to see. Standing by the plane, dressed in a crisp shirt and a pair of sunglasses, was none other than Dr. Henry Wu. Jackson's eyes widened in disbelief. Henry, Jackson exclaimed, a mix of shock and relief flooding through him. I thought you were dead. Henry smiled, the corners of his mouth lifting slightly as he took off his sunglasses. I faked my death on Isla Nublar, as you know. It was the only way to escape the chaos. I owe you for helping me pull it off. Jackson shook his head in awe. I can't believe you're here. I thought I'd never see you again. Life has a way of surprising us, Henry replied, his tone serious. I've been keeping a low profile, but I have resources that can help you on your mission to protect the dinosaurs. Jackson felt a surge of hope. You can help me get back to Isla Sorna? I need to be with Shellshock and his family. Absolutely, Henry said, gesturing toward the plane. I've arranged everything. We can take off as soon as you're ready. As Jackson prepared for the flight, he felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Reuniting with Shellshock was his priority, but he also knew that Henry's presence could bring unforeseen complications. Just remember, Jackson, Henry cautioned as they boarded the plane. The situation on Isla Sorna is more volatile than ever. We need to be cautious. Jackson nodded, his determination unwavering. I'll do whatever it takes to protect them. As the plane's engines roared to life, Jackson felt a rush of adrenaline. He was on his way back to the island, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Jackson settled into his life back on Isla Sorna, he found himself constantly reflecting on the emotional reunion he had envisioned with Shellshock and his family. He had decided to wait 2 years after his return, allowing the raptors to fully integrate and bond with one another. The anticipation of that moment filled him with both excitement and trepidation. During those years, Jackson immersed himself in the work of protecting the island and its inhabitants. He collaborated with Alex, Rebecca, Jasmine, and Isabella on the documentary, which showcased their experiences and the evidence they had gathered against the government. The film was a powerful testament to their mission, and Jackson felt a sense of pride watching it unfold on screen. One evening, after a long day of work, Jackson sat in his home, the sounds of Isla Sorna surrounding him. He grabbed his velociraptor whistle from the table, its familiar weight comforting in his hand. He stepped outside, the warm breeze brushing against his skin as he made his way toward a nearby mountain that offered a view of the lush landscape below. Standing at the mountain's edge, he took a deep breath, the scent of the jungle filling his lungs. With a determined heart, he raised the whistle to his lips and blew into it, the sharp sound cutting through the tranquil air. He waited, his heart pounding with anticipation. The call echoed across the island, a familiar sound that he hoped would reach Shellshock and his family. For 5 minutes, he stood there, listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant calls of other dinosaurs, his mind racing with memories of the bond he had shared with Shellshock. Just as he began to wonder if he would be met with silence, a rustling sound emerged from the underbrush, and his heart soared. He turned, his breath caught in his throat as he saw a familiar shape emerge from the trees. Shellshock, now a magnificent adult velociraptor, stepped into view, its eyes bright and alert. Behind it, the raptors that made up its family followed, their movements graceful and instinctual. Jackson's heart swelled with emotion as he took in the sight of them, the connection he felt as strong as ever. Hey, buddy, he whispered, kneeling down and extending his arms. Shellshock paused, its head tilting as it recognized the familiar voice. The moment felt suspended in time, a reunion that had been 2 years in the making. As Jackson knelt on the ground, his heart racing with anticipation, Shellshock bounded toward him with an exuberance that was unmistakable. The velociraptor leaped into his arms, nuzzling against him with a joyful chirp that echoed the bond they had forged years ago. Jackson laughed, tears of happiness streaming down his face as he hugged Shellshock tightly. "Look at you, buddy. You've grown so much," he exclaimed, feeling the warmth of their connection reignite. The years apart melted away in an instant, replaced by a rush of love and familiarity. As he pulled back to take in Shellshock's vibrant form, Jackson noticed another velociraptor standing nearby, a sleek female with striking markings. She watched them with curious eyes, and beside her were 5 small, energetic velociraptor chicks, their playful antics filling the air with life and laughter. "Wow, you've got a family now," Jackson said, his heart swelling with pride. He watched as Shellshock's mate gently nudged the chicks, encouraging them to explore their surroundings. The sight of Shellshock as a father filled him with joy, knowing that he had played a part in raising Shellshock to be the strong and capable raptor he was today. Jackson couldn't help but smile as one of the baby velociraptors stumbled toward him, its tiny feet unsteady but determined. "Hey there, little one," he said softly, crouching down again to greet the newcomer. The chick chirped excitedly, and Jackson felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment wash over him. He looked back at Shellshock, who was watching him with an expression that seemed to say, "Thank you for being there." Jackson felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought him to this moment. Inside Jackson's cozy home on Isla Sorna, the atmosphere was peaceful and warm. Shellshock, his mate, and their 5 tiny chicks were curled up together on the couch, their rhythmic breathing creating a soothing backdrop. The sight of them brought a smile to Jackson's face, a reminder of the family he had always wanted for Shellshock. As he sat at his writing desk, the soft glow of a lamp illuminated the pages spread before him. Jackson was deep in thought, typing the final words of his novel, a reflection of his adventures on Isla Nublar and Isla Sorna. He poured his heart into the story, recounting every thrilling moment, every challenge faced, and the unbreakable bond he had formed with Shellshock. With each keystroke, memories flooded back to him, the first time he had held Shellshock as an egg, their daring escapes, and the countless adventures they had shared. Jackson felt a sense of fulfillment wash over him as he crafted the closing lines. Finally, he typed the last sentence, pausing for a moment to reflect on the journey that had brought him to this point. He smiled softly as he typed, "Just like the rain falls from the sky, I know that the way that I had lived with my friends and family, I had found so many memories that I shall never forget. Maybe that's why I was brought to these islands." With a sense of accomplishment, Jackson leaned back in his chair and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world lift from his shoulders. His novel was not just a story, it was a testament to the bonds that had shaped his life. He glanced over at the couch, where Shellshock and his family slept peacefully. Jackson's heart swelled with gratitude and love, knowing that he had created a home filled with warmth and connection. Jackson felt a spark of inspiration as he gazed at Shellshock and his family, their peaceful forms nestled together on the couch. He reached for his sketchbook, a cherished item that had accompanied him through many adventures. With a pencil in hand, he began to capture the moment, wanting to preserve the memory of this beautiful family for his book. As he sketched, Jackson focused on the details, the way Shellshock's scales glimmered in the soft light, the delicate features of his mate, and the adorable little chicks snuggled close to their parents. Each stroke of the pencil felt like a tribute to the bond they shared, and he poured his heart into the drawing. The room was silent except for the soft sound of his pencil gliding across the paper. Jackson found himself lost in the process, reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this moment. The challenges, the victories, and the love he had found on Isla Sorna all flowed through him as he worked. After several minutes, he leaned back to admire his work. The sketch captured the essence of Shellshock's family perfectly, a snapshot of happiness and connection that he would treasure forever. Satisfied, Jackson decided to include the drawing in his novel, a visual representation of the life he had built on the island. With a contented sigh, he closed the sketchbook and set it aside, feeling a sense of fulfillment wash over him. This was more than just a story, it was a legacy, a way to honor the friendships and memories that had shaped his life. Jackson took a deep breath, allowing the tranquil atmosphere of his home to wash over him. The soft sounds of the island filled the air, the gentle rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds, and the rhythmic breathing of Shellshock and his family as they slept peacefully on the couch. Feeling a wave of contentment, Jackson settled onto the couch beside Shellshock. The warmth radiating from the raptor brought him a sense of comfort. As he sat there, he absent-mindedly stroked Shellshock's back, marveling at the bond they shared. After a moment, Shellshock stirred, lifting his head and looking up at Jackson with tired, trusting eyes. Without hesitation, the velociraptor rested his head on Jackson's lap, a gesture of affection that made Jackson's heart swell. He could feel the gentle rise and fall of Shellshock's breathing, soothing him as he sank into a state of relaxation. Jackson closed his eyes, allowing the peaceful atmosphere to envelop him. This was what he had fought for, the chance to create a home filled with love, connection, and family. He felt grateful for every moment he had spent on Isla Sorna, and as he sat there with Shellshock, he knew he was exactly where he belonged. Time seemed to fade away as he enjoyed the simple pleasure of being together. The worries of the world outside melted away, replaced by the warmth of the moment. Outside Jackson's house, the sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the landscape of Isla Sorna. The air was filled with the sounds of nature, birds chirping, leaves rustling in the gentle breeze, and the distant calls of various dinosaurs echoing throughout the island. As Jackson relaxed inside with Shellshock, the world outside thrived in perfect harmony. Dinosaurs of all shapes and sizes roamed freely, their movements graceful and confident. A herd of Triceratops grazed peacefully on the lush vegetation, their horns glinting in the sunlight. Nearby, a group of Gallimimus darted playfully through the underbrush, their speed and agility a sight to behold. The mother Allosaurus and her baby wandered close to the house, basking in the warmth of the sun, their bond evident as they nuzzled against one another. In the distance, the majestic form of a Brachiosaurus stretched its long neck to reach the treetops, its gentle demeanor a reminder of the island's prehistoric beauty. As Jackson watched from the window, he felt a profound sense of peace wash over him. This was the life he had fought for, the coexistence of humans and dinosaurs, living side by side in harmony. The struggles and challenges he had faced seemed distant now, overshadowed by the beauty of the moment. In that serene atmosphere, Jackson felt a renewed commitment to protect this paradise and its inhabitants, ensuring that they could continue to thrive in freedom. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an orange and pink glow across the horizon, the scene on Isla Sorna became even more breathtaking. The tranquil harmony of the dinosaurs was punctuated by a powerful roar that reverberated through the air, drawing the attention of every creature on the island. Perched atop the remnants of the abandoned government agency building, a massive T-Rex surveyed the landscape below. Its formidable silhouette stood out against the vibrant sky, a symbol of strength and dominance. With a mighty roar, it proclaimed its presence, asserting its rightful place in the ecosystem. The sound echoed across the island, causing the other dinosaurs to pause and look up. The Triceratops and Gallimimus halted their activities, while the Allosaurus and her baby stood still, their instincts alert to the powerful predator above. Yet, instead of fear, there was a sense of respect. The T-Rex was not a threat to the peaceful coexistence they had formed, it was a guardian of the island, a reminder of the balance of nature. As Jackson stepped outside, he looked up at the T-Rex with awe. The sight was both humbling and exhilarating. Here was a creature that had once been feared, now a part of the beautiful tapestry of life on Isla Sorna. The roar of the T-Rex was a call to the wild, a reminder that this land was still alive with ancient history and the spirit of survival. The dinosaurs resumed their activities, unfazed by the T-Rex's presence, continuing to roam freely in the lush landscape. Jackson felt a sense of pride swell within him, knowing that he had played a part in creating this sanctuary where all creatures could thrive together. As Jackson stood in awe of the T-Rex atop the abandoned government agency building, he felt a shift in the atmosphere around him. From the corner of his eye, he noticed the massive form of a Spinosaurus approaching. Its distinctive sail-like fin rose majestically along its back, and its eyes were filled with curiosity as it made its way toward him. Jackson's heart raced with excitement. The Spinosaurus had always been a magnificent creature, a symbol of the island's rich biodiversity. As it neared, Jackson knelt down, extending his hand in a gesture of trust. The Spinosaurus paused, its massive head lowering to meet him, and Jackson gently pet the creature's head, feeling the rough texture of its scales beneath his fingers. "Hey there, big guy," Jackson murmured, a smile spreading across his face. The Spinosaurus let out a soft rumble, a sound that resonated deep within its chest, as if acknowledging his presence. In that moment, Jackson felt a profound connection to the creature, a shared understanding that transcended species. The Spinosaurus shifted its weight, leaning into Jackson's touch, and he couldn't help but chuckle at the unexpected bond they had formed. It was moments like this that reinforced his commitment to protecting the dinosaurs and ensuring they could live freely on Isla Sorna. As Jackson continued to pet the Spinosaurus, he glanced back at the T-Rex, still roaring proudly from atop the building. The harmony of the island was palpable, and he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for being part of this vibrant ecosystem. As the sun began to set on Isla Sorna, casting a warm glow over the landscape, Jackson felt a deep sense of fulfillment wash over him. He had created a home where dinosaurs could roam free, where friendships had blossomed, and where the bonds between humans and these magnificent creatures flourished. With Shellshock and his family, the Spinosaurus, and all the other inhabitants of the island, Jackson knew that he had found his purpose. The journey had been fraught with challenges, but every moment had led him to this beautiful reality. As he stood there, surrounded by the sounds of the island and the gentle presence of the dinosaurs, Jackson felt a wave of peace settle over him. He had made a difference, and he would continue to do so for as long as he could. With a final glance at the T-Rex, who still stood proudly atop the building, Jackson turned to head back to his home, ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited him next. And so, the story of Jackson and his journey on Isla Sorna came to a close, but the legacy of friendship, family, and harmony would continue to thrive.